You will become the most likable person after watching this video. You're going to learn how you can make people like you. When we hear something, most of us think, whether we realize it or not, what does this mean to me? People immediately start trying to link your words with their interests, and if they find any kind of connection, you two will start making a strong bond. What's even more interesting is that this method was proven to produce unexpected results in the business field, but it can also bring some joy in a 9-to-5 job. Here's a little example so you can paint a picture in your head. Let's say you want to ask your boss if you could work from home for some time. Instead of saying, "Hey boss, I think it would be a good idea if I could work from home. Other companies let their employees do it, why don't we? I've got a family too, you know." Try saying something that will connect with your boss on a deeper thought level. Something like, "Hey, you remember the time I was sick last month? Well, when I did some work from home, I noticed I was way more productive than ever. I did twice as much work than I would do on a typical day in the office. I was hoping to propose a trial where I could work 1 day a week from home. What do you think?" Notice how in the first way of proposing, you mentioned no similar interest to your bosses, and you gave no solid reasons for him to give you that remote position. "I've got a family" will just come in one ear and exit out the other. He's probably got a family too, and he still comes to the office. But in the second way of proposing, you mentioned how you were much more productive working from home, and you know that he dedicates most of his focus towards the productivity of his employees. On top of that, you didn't demand immediately to start working from home. Instead, you suggested a trial in which you will work 1 day a week remotely and slowly progress toward a fully remote position. How could he pass up that offer? Before we move on to big business situations in which you can apply this principle, let's see how you can pull the best out of someone in your everyday life by talking in terms of their interests. If you just met someone new, you may not know a lot about their interests yet. Don't stress about it because that's perfectly fine. But in order to pull them through the funnel of this method, you must find out a little bit more about their interests, what they like and what they want. Once you're having a nice conversation with them, listen to what they're saying and look for any hints. They might smile or make a specific gesture if they're talking about something that excites them. You can get these hints from literally anything. If they're wearing a t-shirt with a Porsche logo, mention how the 911 GT3 RS is your dream car. Talk about its engineering, looks, and numbers. That will instantly make their eyes widen, and that conversation will soon become a source of dopamine. If you're going out on a date with a girl you like, the best thing you could possibly do is build an engaging conversation with a strong bond. One study proved that when women are more engaged in a conversation on a first date, they were much more likely to report being attracted to the guy. But remember, we can only be interesting if we are truly interested. Now, back to business stuff. Have you ever found yourself in a situation in which you want to make a deal with someone, but they continue declining your offer, or even worse, completely ignoring you? Maybe you got the impression that they are arrogant, but did you stop for a moment to ask yourself, am I doing it wrong? Well, that's exactly what Henry G. Duvernoy did. He founded, back then, a well-known wholesale bakery called Duvernoy & Sons. And even though his business was doing good, he wanted to sell bread to a certain New York hotel. Henry dedicated a couple of minutes of his life every week for 4 years straight to call the manager of that hotel and offer him the bread from his bakery. But to no avail. He went to the same town gatherings and events as the manager and even lived in that hotel for some time just to get that deal. But he still failed. Over 200 failed attempts later, Henry decided it was time to change his tactics. After studying human relations for a while, he decided to find out what interested the manager of the hotel, what got him excited. With some research, Henry discovered that the manager of the hotel was a member of the Society of Hotel Executives called the Hotel Greeters of America. Not only a member, but a president of the organization, as well as president of International Greeters. This meant that no matter where its conventions were held, he would always be there. When Henry saw the manager the next day, he immediately started talking about the greeters. And the response he got was exciting to say the least. 2 of them talked for half an hour about the greeters. Henry listened carefully as the manager was enthusiastically talking in a vibrant voice. You could see in the manager's eyes that this organization wasn't just a hobby, but a passion of his life. The manager was happy to sell Henry a membership in his organization, and Henry was happy because he knew his plan was working. A few days passed when Henry received a call from the hotel steward. He invited him over and told him to bring samples and prices. Keep in mind, Henry said nothing about the bread or anything else about his business interests. As Henry was walking into the hotel, the steward greeted him with the words, I don't know what you did to the old boy, but he sure is sold on you. Henry spent 4 years of his life trying to get this deal, but he only needed 30 minutes after he resolved to change his tactics. Think of it. I had been drumming at that man for 4 years, trying to get his business, and I'd still be drumming at him if I hadn't finally taken the trouble to find out what he was interested in and what he enjoyed talking about. Before we move on to the lesson this story tells us, take a second and hit that subscribe button because I dug through the World Wide Web for days just to find some details needed to complete the story. What moral should you walk away with from this 18th century story? If you're facing some kind of problem you've been trying to solve for quite some time now but failed with each attempt, it's time to change your tactic and overall approach to that problem. Instead of convincing someone, try talking in terms of their interest. When you're convincing someone to do something that goes exclusively in your favor, the chances of them doing it are extremely low. But if you grab their attention with something that works in their favor as well as yours, the chances of them accepting the offer become much higher. Bear in mind that this principle is equally important as being a good listener. Learning what topics interest someone and encouraging them to talk about those topics takes being a good listener to a whole new level. I'll explain it in one simple sentence. Instead of talking about what you want to talk about something they would care to listen to. When you talk in terms of the other person's interest, you connect their memories with yours, and this creates a bond that gives you influence in their mind. You subconsciously show that you care for them, have made that extra effort to know about their interests, and have something to add to what they already know, adding value to their knowledge about the topic. When you add value to another person, they often desire to reciprocate with an equal amount or more. Follow that good old saying, do to others what you want them to do to you. Just think about all the opportunities, both in business and in everyday life, that this way of conducting conversations opens up. If I were on a speed run to become a superior version of myself and had to pick only 3 skills, this is definitely one that I would pick. Watch this video 2 times if you have to understand the power of talking in terms of the other person's interest. Because once you do, I guarantee you will be able to achieve anything and everything. And if you want to learn how to avoid this one mistake that makes people dislike you, click the video on the screen.